I went to some of my old notebooks. Some very, very amateur stuff written in there.
I'm Tim Kittro, and here to bring home the bacon are Big Ryan the Fat Guy.
He came in because the light was on. What's up, YouTube? It's the NFL Picks Against the Spread for Week 1 of the 22-23 NFL season. Fat Guy, we are, what is that, 25 plus 8? What's that, 32? 33? 33, there you go. 33 games above 500 after, what is this, close to 1,250 games at a quick glance here. 51.4%, which is the new break-even point for Pinnacle, who has snuck their odds up to minus 106 after being at minus 105 for NFL spreads for how long, like, since I can remember.
Yeah, there's some different competition there, and I want to take a moment on this. Usually we don't dwell on our results, but I want to use this as an example. And we're going to do it. It's probably not the most popular thing, because, you know, you have to balance entertainment and information, as they say. Well, this is going to be informative. We're going to call this Be Honest with Yourself. It's gotten extremely hard NFL has always been an efficient market, so betting at close is very difficult to beat. And unless you're have an extremely good model, and we began modeling, both him and I, Big Rye, it's kind of where we all started, and we had success in the beginning modeling. That has dwindled unless you are a big, like almost an actuary, and you have lots of time to do this. It's very unlikely that your model is going to beat the closing line. And when I say we did closing line value last year a lot, why it works is because it kind of follows the efficient market hypothesis. If everyone puts their ideas and they put money behind their ideas, it's not just a pundit on TV. You're going to kind of shape a line that's very difficult to beat on both sides. And you'll see right here, this is a reasonable sample. And even this also too, even if you bet every game and you had a really good season where, you know, you finished 57% or something, this, like, for instance, our 2017 season, that's not a big enough sample. Like the sample we have for our entire YouTube recorded picks, this isn't even really a big enough sample. You need something with heavy volume, like college basketball, a season of 5,000 or 2 seasons. So what I'm saying too is when you're betting at close, you probably don't have an edge, but there are things to do. We just have to modify our approach, and every week or so, every game, I'm going to try and hint at some of those ideas, you know. So and one more thing, when you're betting, especially another example of why betting at close is extremely hard to beat, look at the limits, you know, like the limits when the sportsbooks open on Sunday night for the week before, or look ahead lines are a lot lower. They're a lot. Look at the limits right before close. They're often 6 figures. So why would a sportsbook let you bet, you know, $3,000 a week before and then 100,000 or 70,000 right before? It's because they've seen the whole shape of the market. They've had all the opinions come in. So what we're going to definitely talk about is trying to attain value in different ways, because conventionally, you know, spread, money line, total, it's getting pretty tough out there. It really is. So it is beatable, but I'm telling you, it's getting tough out there. So on to the first pick, Big Rye.
On to the first game, Thursday night football between the Buffalo Bills and the LA Rams. The Rams are 2.5-point dogs at home at SoFi. 31% of early bettors are on the Rams, and it looks like the Rams plus 2.5 right now at Pinnacle, minus 112. So the juice is favoring the Rams. Fat Guy, your thoughts on this game?
Now, this would, you know, used to be a spot where I'd be like, just bet the money line, right? But they've kind of figured that out, and like they price it properly, and I'm indifferent now, which is it's strange. I play a lot of poker, and at the highest level of pokers, you make your opponent indifferent to their decisions. And that's what these sports books are doing a lot, and it's very difficult. Because this is a juiceless contest, I am going to take the Rams at plus 2.5. But I can't say I have an opinion. And this is the other thing about when you listen to, you know, TikTok is very popular, and other, you know, short form type of social media, is they're gonna throw, Josh Allen XYZ versus Matt Stafford XYZ, and they can spin it any which way. Unfortunately, we're not good looking enough to lie to you through entertainment. So you kind of have to think of what's an interesting play. Here's an example. I saw this exact same thing, and they had who was the first team to beat the Rams, and I don't have the number offhand, but the Bills were, I think even money, which I think it's currently minus 125 is the best line you can get. And don't quote me on this necessarily, but that's just an example of something, like a prop that can be exploited, right? So think about when you're thinking about these types of things, you want to focus on derivatives. You want to understand that stuff. Or in-game betting, the juice is really high, but it is beatable. So as far as before the game goes and the contest, I really don't have an opinion on the game. However, this is there is more juice on the Rams, which does lend itself to a higher probability of them covering the 2.5 spread. And I am a little bit surprised, let's say, at 69% of early bettors on the Bills. I'm just surprised it's not leveled out, but I can almost guarantee by kickoff, the volume of money is going to be within 2%. Hard to get that data in truth, but I bet you, think about it. This is going to be one of the more bet games of the entire year, and it's going to be a good one. The NFL's great at this. It's Tampa Bay, Dallas was fantastic last year. I would be hard pressed to see how this wouldn't titillate fans a little bit. So this is going to be, I just want to watch this game, if anything, as a fan. So I like the game. I am indifferent to the prices. Rams plus 2.5.
Concise is always, Fat Guy. And this game so far, 40,000 bets, 83% of the money is on the Bills. So take that information with a grain of salt, as always, but people are leaning towards the Bills early on. On to the Sunday early slate. And Fat Guy, we will start off with the Philadelphia Eagles traveling to Detroit to take on the Lions. Lions 3.5-point dogs at home. 43% of early bettors are on the Lions. However, they got 57% of the money and 18,000 bets approximately so far, according to this data that we have.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where I'm kind of a homer for. There's a lot of reason to take the Eagles from a data perspective. As Big Rye said, concise as usual. Well, I will counter with long-windedness is the soul of wit. I don't know who said that, but we're going to call it it is a quote that I have heard. And, at laying 3.5, I just find that difficult, even against a team like the Lions. I'd like to see, these Lions are one of those teams I want to see success from. I'm kind of curious, though, in terms of what type of progression and the Lions have from a coaching standpoint.
Me too.
You just kind of root for them, because I kind of feel like they ran bad, for lack of a better term, last year, because they kind of got the short end of the stick. This is the only thing.
Baltimore game.
Yes,
specifically.
Yes. I was going to bring that up, but again, you could isolate that one instance, right?
With any
the greatest
team,
kick of all time. With anything, you just go, oh, this one play. Well, yeah, because it's the end of the game, but there's each team's made 24 mistakes prior to that, which would have altered the course. It's just we're human beings. Is there anything more dramatic than that Justin Tucker kick? There just really isn't. So I kind of wish the Lions well, and a plus 3.5. It's hard for me to not have the Lions with the hook, even though there is an analytical reason to choose the Eagles from a contest, but I am generally indifferent. So from an entertainment standpoint, let's go Lions.
On to the next game, which is going to be the New Orleans Saints traveling to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Plus 5.5 at home. 26% of early bettors are on the home Falcons. 18,000 bets as well, and a majority of the money is on the Saints.
Yeah. Now, the 6 is a pretty key number nowadays, so I think if it does get a dramatic shift to 6 or 6.5, I think I am going to consider taking the Falcons, preferably not before close. The best part would be if it went up to 6.5 and then got bet right down back to 5.5. Then I'd feel really good about my pick. But we're going to take the Falcons here in the contest. There's a lot of head coaching changes, and Dennis Allen has had the reins before as a head coach. We'll see if he's changed it all. But there's we'll call it the Brandon Staley effect or the Kevin Stefanski effect. Uh, this is just a theory I've been kind of pondering. I think there's value in, from a modeling perspective, in kind of extrapolating like a coach's in-game decisions. Like I think the old school way of for instance, how you going forward on fourth down. I mean, those are just one of many decisions, but it's one we can isolate and analyze, quite efficiently. There's a fourth down bot, Ben Baldwin. It's not perfect, but it's very interesting. It's very interesting to see, what the bot does suggest. And it's not like, here's the thing, like a new coach, not that Dennis Allen's he's a new old coach, I guess. He's still a young guy, but like if let's say he makes 4 fourth down decisions, he's conservative, he's old school. How likely is that to change? You know what I mean? Like I can only think in one recent memory, but this is anecdotal, don't forget. Like when they did Riverboat Ron and he went from like never going for it to going for it. And he did get the results too. But I can't think of a guy, do you know what I mean, that would like change because they're kind of their only time in the big seat. And other than, times of desperation, I don't see how they would just flip that decision making. And that decision making is a good window into how they would fare. If the coach is properly aggressive on fourth down versus one that isn't, I think that's going to lend itself to some good fade or following, or undervaluing or overvaluing based on the weight of those fourth down decisions. So that's something to look out for. And I'm kind of curious, with not so much with Dennis Allen, but other coaches going forward. But I still want to see, did he change from his tenure? I believe it was the Raiders he was the head coach of before. Either way, we're going to be taking the Atlanta Falcons in this one. And this is mostly a contest pick. If I were to bet it, I'm hoping that like Thursday night I can get up to a 6 or a 6.5. Otherwise, I probably would leave it. So we're going to take contest pick Atlanta plus 5.5.
On to the next one. It's another road dog. That's 4 in a row to start. That's just
my favorite wrestler.
Happenstance with what's going on here. But Baltimore at the New York Jets. Jets are 7-point dogs at home. 15% of early bets on the Jets. 21% of the money. 25,000 bets placed with this data. And your thoughts on this?
It's a tough one. Like this is an interesting one in terms of assessing value, because it's not like it's a dubious prospect as to who's going to start quarterback for the Jets. And you have to think, if Zach Wilson was out, how much would it affect the line in terms of, it's better to, instead of points, like points is a bad way of going, is to look at the implied probabilities in between the money lines. That's a better way of going, especially if you can have a calculator that can remove the VIG. I have one of those. They're very difficult to do. I highly recommend going through the rigors of doing it. But anyways, when you remove the juice and you compare the implied probabilities through the money line, it's interesting to see what the market feels a player's worth is. Now, you can't say definitively that like this is probably a middle line as to where like Zach Wilson would be. Like this feels like a 60% chance of playing. But again, this is just a total. That's a number I just came up with in my head. Like, because I don't think Zach Wilson playing, I mean, maybe it could move it to Ravens plus or minus 6.5, but I feel like it'd just be 7 with bad juice, and him not playing could move it to 8. But then you could make an argument that, is he, who's the backup, Mike White? How much better is he than him? Or is it Joe Flacco?
It's Joe Flacco.
Well, Mike White's on the roster, okay? And he had a great game against Cincinnati if you were on the other side of it in Survivor last year. Just so you guys know. But regardless, this is one of those spots where you can kind of ascertain a quarterback's value. It's a really, really good spot, especially if you see a line posted and then a guy come out and then see what the closing line is between a quarterback, best example, going out and right before close, because then you can actually, through implied probabilities, figure out the value of that player. And that's kind of massive, right? Especially like if you have early injury history, because that's kind of what, if you were a COVID wizard, you could have made a lot of money betting on sports. It's not as the same thing anymore because the protocols aren't the same. But like this, knowing a player's value, that would also help you model too, to be fair, is how good of a player, how much he affects their chances. So in this spot, long-windedness is the soul of wit. We're going to be taking the Jets. We're going to be taking the 7 points, and I hope Zach Wilson plays.
I'm excited for the person who makes their team name this year for the
Yes,
picks,
it has to
the
have something
COVID
to do with
wizard.
that.
On to the next one. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals 6.5-point favorites at home. 65% of early bettors are on the Bengals. I can't remember the last time the Bengals were 6.5-point favorites against the Steelers.
Yeah. I always have trouble in these spots. One of the things I used to bet on like 10 years ago, I went through some of my old notebooks. Some very, very amateur stuff written in there. And
not much has changed.
Not much has changed, has it? Right? So one of the things I liked most is when two above, between below average and above average teams played each other, and they, there was a more than a 3.5-point spread. If you
this fits it.
Yeah, and like you could say what you want about the Bengals, but I think, there's a lot of think of the variance in the playoffs. You got 4 games, right? Were the Bengals the second best team in the NFL last year? No, they weren't. I like them. I think Joe Burrow is great. I think they're an exciting team. But does that, you know what I mean? Are they like that much better? Maybe they are 6.5-point favorites over the Steelers that don't have a quarterback, But this is another thing, too, I have a hard time with. And this is, I would call this me gripping onto that old school thinking. It's hard for me to put money against like a well-run franchise like the Steelers when they're getting points. It really is. Because it's the Steelers. There's something about the coaching that is underrated. They haven't had very many, and that's because they've made really good choices. And not that I know the inner workings of Steeler meetings. I haven't watched enough Antonio Brown videos, but I feel like Mike Tomlin does listen to his staff, and that's why. And all he does is get his players prepared, and they're just a well-run organization. And I feel like this is probably, regardless of what happens in this game, this is probably a 0.5 point off. I like to bet this, and I wonder if it's going to come down closer to game time, because I have a hard time imagining Sharps laying 6.5, because 6 is more of a key number than in past years. But again, this one is I don't have any modeling data between this, but I'm going to be looking to see if I can't get a strong midweek line on the Steelers. I like them in this spot. Pittsburgh Steelers plus 6.5.
Next up, we have the Patriots traveling to Miami to take on the Dolphins, where games usually get wacky between these two teams. Dolphins -3 at home. 67% of bettors are on the Dolphins. Fat Guy, who you got?
We're going to be taking the Dolphins here. It's, not exactly a contrarian pick here. It's mostly for entertainment purposes. Well, it is. And contest-wise, there's just heavy juice on the 3, so this is a good zero vig number. It's a very, very good one. So Dolphins -3 would definitely be the pick. This is from a fan standpoint, I'm kind of curious just on what this head coach is going to look like and how he's going to use the pieces. The Dolphins have a much better roster than New England Patriots. Quarterback, you could make some, different distinctions, but as far as overall talent, it'd be hard to argue that the Dolphins aren't better than the Patriots in that the cupboard isn't bare. And I found I don't know if the Tyreek Hill thing is a very I don't really put stock in receivers, but I'm curious how he fits in. Like Jalen Waddle, I think it's really poor decision to draft a receiver that high, but you can't say that he wasn't effective in his rookie season. And I thought underneath he was a very good complementary piece to Tua. So I'm curious how Tua is not maybe the best deep ball thrower, how they're going to use Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So that's just interesting to me. And
Mike McDaniel's coming from San Fran, so there's a good chance he's going to imply some of the same strategies he's used with Debo. But
Debo's a lot different player than those guys. So I just want to see how it comes together. So this is definitely a point of intrigue, is how the Miami Dolphins look in this one. And this one I'm going to be very critical of the coaching. The decision making. I'm going to keep an eye on it because I want to see how Mike McDaniel operates and how much trust he has in his offense, especially on fourth down decisions. So this is purely a contest pick because of the favorable juice. It'll be Miami -3, but I am very interested in this game from a fan perspective.
And Mike McDaniel, young, 39 years old. Kind of the trend right now is that seems like late 30s, early 40s coaches. On to the next one, Jacksonville at Washington, the new Washington Football Commanders. I'm guessing it's just the Washington Commanders, but we've got the nice crest here, looking like an EPL team, as Fat Guy said.
I bought the
privately.
hat.
Yeah, there you go. And Washington is 3-point favorites at home. The public isn't buying it, though. Only 35% of the public is on Washington, and this game is 12,000 bets, so it's the least popular game to bet early on so far.
Yeah, well, I mean, how often do you see the Jaguars getting a little bit of support? It's just not very often. This one will be another interesting one as well. Doug Peterson, back from we've called it a successful tenure at in Philadelphia, and I have a future on Jacksonville to win the division. I got 8-1. It looks like it's gonna close at 7.3, 7.25 to 1. So perhaps I got a little bit of value. I'm not sure it's very difficult to remove VIG from a multi-way proposition, but I digress, and I do like the prospects of Jacksonville having some success. I do think this is a game though where 3 is a reasonable number for the Commanders, and there's a lot of negativity around Carson Wentz, and this might be one of those teams, kind of like, he's not Alex Smith and he never will be to me, but he might end up becoming an underrated player in that, think about all of his one of my favorite people that I met through this, Mickey, he would call it disaster plays, I think. And who had more than Carson Wentz last year for the Indianapolis Colts? Because they would be humming, so close to getting it done, and he instead of just taking a sack, a really bad interception or a sack fumble or just a fumble, those kind of stick out in your head, and that jilts bettors too. It does. So for someone that is emotionally invested in that, this is a guy that's just not going to be popular, and I think there is going to be, perhaps some value. I don't know if there is value in this game necessarily, but this is one I really am interested to see a Trevor Lawrence leap and a perhaps underrated Carson Wentz performance. I think there might be value on the Commanders, but at 2.5, I'm probably going to buy them, assuming it is a midweek move and not a week move at close. So contest-wise, Commanders -3.
On to the next one, San Fran at Chicago. Chicago +7.5 at home, 29% of bets on the Bears, but they are receiving 65% of the dollars bet with 21,000 bets. Fat Guy, who you got?
We like to hear that discrepancy. This is a contrarian pick. I really am finding the contrarian theory to have perhaps lost a lot of its mettle. But there are spots where I do like it. I like the Bears at +7.5. And you have to think too, this game doesn't seem I find it hard that this is essentially a red-shirted quarterback against Justin Fields has more time on the field than Trey Lance. So I hate doing the handicap thing, but I think that there's a chance for mistakes, you know what I mean? And that always tends to favor the underdog. So I do like the Bears at this price. The Bears are bad, we know it, but that's why you get 7.5 points at home against the court. Also, too, the Niners offense feels like it would take a lot of time. Same with even the Bears. The drives are going to be slow. I just don't see how these teams are going to score fast. I mean, it must be reflected in the OU. Yeah, it is. 41. You know what I mean? Think about the permutations of scores. So for the Niners to win by 8 or more and the score to be low, it's just 21-13. You know what I mean? There's just not that many. And then people can say, oh, there's going to be a Bears shutout. I'll bet you there isn't. I think the Bears are bad. I think they're very bad. But like it's hard. I don't know. It's hard for me to take a favorite with when the OU is 41. And then you can say, "Oh, well then I'm assuming it's going over." Well, when you graph it out, what would be like the big key number to go over that? So like probably the next number would be 41 to 44 probably. You know what I mean? The next deviation over. It'd be really unlikely to go over like 49 or something. So even that has not obviously many more permutations of scoring over the total of 41 or 41 and a half, what have you. But I'd be hard pressed to lay points here. I like the Bears in this spot, and I am considering taking them tonight.
Next up, Cleveland at Carolina. Carolina minus 2.5. 81% of early bettors are on the Panthers. Fat guy, who you got?
I like the Cleveland Browns. It's hard to back them here. I always say this: bad news is good news in gambling, and there's a chance that this line, like, again, handicapping and talking about rosters is not my favorite thing. I do believe the Cleveland Browns have the best roster in the NFL, quarterback aside. They're top to bottom. It's hard to see any holes. I'll tell you that much. It's maybe tight end. Like O-line, D-line are pretty good. Linebacker is light. Linebacker is not as valued a position as it once was. Secondary, they're pretty sharp. Receiver, you could make a case. They picked up Amari Cooper. What does that mean? Who knows? But I like them at this 2.5. I'll probably just take Browns money line if I were to bet. There'd have to be a little bit more research done. Perhaps this is a little curtailing of some Baker Mayfield fodder. I'd really like to see this game, how it shakes out, especially Carolina. Like, it's so weird to add a quarterback that late. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems, I don't know. And how secure is Baker Mayfield's job? Like, we're going to find out. So this is more of a fan one for me. I like the Browns. I wish them well. They have a lot of bad news, but I think that does often open some nice betting opportunity. I'm not sure that this is the time for that, but I'm going to be taking the Browns in the contest plus 2.5.
Next up, Colts at the Texans. Texans +8 at home. Pretty much split evenly between betting percentages. However, a lot more money has been placed on the Texans. Fat guy, who you got?
Yeah. The one thing I kind of like with the Texans of being a big dog is they have a coach that, like, he's coaching veterans. Like, that's what we kind of liked about the Texans before, and they had a little bit of draft capital going into the season. So it's I think their ability to keep it close, like they're a very mundane offense, right? So I think, you know what I mean? Like, going for it a lot on fourth is going to give out disastrous results, or very fortuitous results. I think with Lovie Smith, I don't have his fourth down decisions in front of me, but I do recall him being a little bit more conservative. And I think that lends itself to covering a spread a bit more. Whereas like Brandon Staley, like, to use an extreme example, I would love to bet him as a big money line dog. The Chargers are never going to be that because they're way too good. But like, those philosophies tend to make it easier to choose between spread and money line. And I don't mind the Texans at +8 here. We know that they're bad. We know. But also, too, there's another reason for that in terms of coaching decisions. Frank Reich he's excellent at just trying to win the game. In contrary to Buffalo, he has an offense that can score very quickly, and he has an offense that can go very slowly. And I think they do have a nice quarterback to do that. So if they're not covering this spread late in the fourth and the Colts get the ball, I think it's very unlikely that they're going to cover the spread because there'd be no need. So in this spot, I don't mind the Texans. I wouldn't call this a bet or anything, but this is just something to look out for, especially with derivatives. I'm sure if you could do some math or find some spots in live betting, whereas, like maybe the Colts are up, let's say 6 points or something, and the spread is Colts -6.5. Like, are they going to score or not? I would tend to to lean towards, depending on the situation, the Colts not scoring. So just because they're going to try and win the game, rather than Buffalo, I would think the exact opposite, because they throw the ball no matter what, whether they're up or down or sideways. So this is going to be a contest pick, and this is going to be a Houston Texans. But I think this is one where you can look for coach's philosophy to perhaps find an edge in a different way, perhaps in the derivative or live betting market.
Next up, Raiders, Chargers. Chargers 3.5-point favorites at home. Bets are split pretty evenly. Money is favoring the Raiders. Fat guy, who you got?
I'm going to be taking the LA Chargers. I'm a bit of a homer for him. I love this coach. This should be one of the more exciting games of the week. I mean, I'm kind of saying that about a lot of games, pointing out different points of intrigue, but that's because it's the first week of the season, and you have to lend me a little bit of fandom to that. And this is one of the games I am very interested in. See how Josh McDaniels does as his reinvigorated second kick of the can as the head coach of the Raiders. And Brandon Staley, does he keep aggressive or does he dial it back? Because I think he was a little over aggressive last week. This is one of the best rosters in the NFL in the LA Chargers, and I think this is one to watch. Certainly. So circle this one. This is going to be a contest pick at Chargers -3.5. I would like them at -3. I think that would be worth a bet. And I think Raiders, I don't know what I'd have to get on the Raiders. Probably a high money line, like 2-1 or something. But contest pick, Chargers -3.5. I'd like to watch it.
Next up, Fat Guy, Green Bay at the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings 2-point dogs at home. 41% of early bettors on the Vikings. Pretty much the same money. Who you got?
This is another tough one. This game feels like chalk. Same old rivals. There's a million permutations. Oh, every game you can say that. This will just be a contest pick, Minnesota Vikings. Somehow I'm less interested in this than anything. I did find it curious, though, that the over-under for Justin Jefferson was the highest for yards. And I'm kind of curious how, like why that is and how are they able to ascertain that? Is it just buzz, or is the market overestimating that? Because I find it hard to believe that he has a higher OU in wide receiving yards than Cooper Kupp, but I just thought that was a little bit interesting. And Kirk Cousins' passing yards was obscenely high. So I'm kind of curious to see if this offense under a new head coach is going to be a little bit different. But, I mean, that's more of I'm probably only going to catch the box score of this game, to be perfectly honest.
Next up, the New York Giants at the Tennessee Titans. Titans are 5.5-point favorites at home. The bets are split evenly here. However, the money is heavily favoring the New York Giants. Who you got?
Yeah, they probably like the points here. Tennessee, I can understand why the market might feel that way. Probably because this is going to be another slower game. I can't imagine the OU is very high here. The highest OU is highest under is 44 and the lowest is 43.5. That's pretty low for a standard NFL game. So you can see these teams are more than likely going to be running teams. So I can understand that. We're just going to be taking the Giants as a contest pick, but it would pique my interest rather if the Giants got up to 6, or dare I say, at 6.5. It'd be hard for me not to put money on them if they weren't a midweek move or Friday night move to 6.5. And I'm, hopefully one of the bettors that bets this down to from 6.5 to 6 or 5.5 where it is now. So this will be a contest pick Giants, but I would be interested in them if there is some line movement.
And the final Sunday afternoon game or midday game, Kansas City at the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals 3.5-point dogs at home. 35% of bettors are on Arizona. 27% of dollars on Arizona. 15,000 bets. Fat Guy, who you got?
Well, we're going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to lay the points here. It's not my favorite number, let's be real here, but the juice does favor them slightly in this no-vig contest. So that'll be it. This one will be for people that like high-scoring games. This has a really high OU. It looks like, 54 on the high end?
54.
That's pretty big. It's pretty substantial. So, but one thing, more going back to interesting props, Kyler Murray was a little bit lower than you would expect. I mean, how much could DeAndre Hopkins actually affect that? So I'm kind of curious if they embrace the run game a little bit more rather than the much touted air raid offense. This should be a people that like high scoring, this should be their sort of game. So it's purely a contest pick though for us, and I'll be taking the Chiefs -3.5.
On to Sunday Night Football, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to Dallas to take on the Cowboys, who are 1-point dogs at home. 35% of bets, 37% of dollars are on the Cowboys. Fat Guy, who you got?
Well, we're gonna go with the Bucs here in a we'll call it a revenge game, a Week 1 revenge game, back to back. I don't remember the last time that happened. Pretty interesting. So I mean that was the first game last year. It was Dallas at Bucs. Spread was what, 7? I think. I think it got up to 9. Yeah. Well, now it's just 1, and obviously different teams, different coaches, but there is some value in terms of betting in a no juice contest in taking the Bucs -1. I kind of like them at this evaluation as well, but that's just purely from a gut standpoint. I don't have any math or modeling or even line efficiency reasons, top-down reasons for liking the Bucs. But this is a game I will take a closer look at, and I am interested in. So this is a contest pick, Bucs -1, but this one I'm gonna take a little bit closer look to see if there's any value I can ascertain midweek.
Tampa Bay closes 10-point favorites at home in that opening game.
Wow.
Monday Night Football, Denver at Seattle. Seattle 6-point dogs at home. 8% of bettors are on the Seahawks. 14% of dollars bet. So not a lot of people liking the Seahawks.
No, and this is one where I really think there's going to be a dramatic shift. I think this closes at Denver -7. That's why I kind of like them at 6 here, and I'm probably going to take it if I can find a nice low juice one. We'll just pull up the game right in front of me to see if there's any line that's just popping out at me. Yeah, they're all, there's Circa's at -105, -6. That looks like that's the best you can get. So I'd be willing to make that wager at that price. -115, no, you might as well just have 6.5. It's not quite the same, but pretty close. 6 is a key number. I like the Denver Broncos at Denver -6. If I can get down on a number like -105, which is currently the number they have at Circa, but it's unavailable to me, then I would do it. So the pick and in real life is going to be Denver -6, and I think there will be some closing line value on that 6 number.
All right, Fat Guy, on to the lightning round, where we we first start off with Bills Rams.
It's Rams.
Eagles Lions.
The Lions.
Saints Falcons.
Falcons. Give me a better number though, please.
Ravens Jets.
Wilson Jets.
Steelers Bengals.
I always like when they say Steelers or Steelers. I think yeah, there you go.
Patriots Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins.
Jaguars Commanders.
I couldn't wear the hat without going Commanders.
Niners Bears.
Bears.
Browns at the Panthers.
The Cleveland Browns.
Colts at Texans.
Houston Texans. Lovie Smith. Let's go.
Raiders Chargers.
Chargers. I want to watch that game.
Packers Vikings.
The Minnesota Vikings and the 2 points.
Giants Titans.
New York Giants +5.5.
Chiefs Cards.
Kansas City Chiefs. High OU.
Bucks Cowboys.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers -1.
And the Denver Broncos traveling to Seattle to take on the Seahawks Monday night.
The potentially closing line value, Denver -6 Broncos.
My 5-star entertainment game of the week, Jaguars at the Washington Commanders. Remember, you guys can make your picks against the spread for week 1 at BigRyanTheFatGuy.com. No prizes this year. It's all about pride. So make your picks. Come to the comments section. Tell us why we were wrong, why we're terrible. Come up with the funniest names ever. Make us laugh. Fat Guy and I love the JS715 at name of the week, plus all the honorable mentions. So
I'll make a proclamation. If you can hurt my feelings with a name this year, I'll pay that person $100, and I'll be completely honest.
Perfect. This is great. I always love to watch him suffer through the pain.
It happens all the time.
Fat Guy, that's it. That's week 1 in the books. It's feels like we picked up right where we left off.
It felt cohesive, like I went all in the right direction all the time. Just one steady, streamlined direction.
And what game did you say you're most excited about? Is it the Raiders Chargers? Is that
Raiders
is that
Chargers?
the most exciting game for you?
I'm
Is that
kind
what
of
you're looking forward to.
I always hated the Chargers franchise, but it's hard not to like this team. This is a fat guy team, like it really is. I like them. I like the Browns too. It's just gonna be hard watching Brissett. It's not their fault, obviously. I mean, you could say due diligence, whatever. I'm not interested in hashing out punishments the NFL should or shouldn't do. But I do like the Browns, but I'd like to see them, in full with their starting quarterback. So that being said, the Chargers offer that. I guess we'll call it they're a team of the future. Like they're not in terms of like they're going to get better. They might be at their peak, within now or next year. But their process is progressing the sport, I think. So I really like the Chargers. I like to watch them. And Vegas has they have some offensive clout about them. The only thing too, like there's a lot of holes in Vegas as well, but I'm curious how this game will shake out. So that would have to be my star one.
Perfect. Well, that's it for us. Week 1 is in the books, guys. Remember to make your picks, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and thank you for watching.